much, once they got on land, they pretty much had everything to do for photosynthesis for the most part. The next step was to get bigger, right? And so vascularization allows you to be a lot bigger than those other things we just saw, the bryophytes. And also then what we'll see next is the reproductive. Remember sporophyte, gametophyte?
Yeah.
So the sporophyte on the bryophytes were the small little unbranching things, right? Depended upon the gametophyte for survival. Remember it had a placenta? Now this is flipped. The sporophyte now is going to dominate. So what you see here is a sporophyte, and they get big, right? Because they are vascular. And they also, the gametophytes then are reduced. They're really, really small, little itty bitty things. So it's flip-flopped, right? But still the same life cycle. Remember multicellularity on both generations, haploid and diploid. And these are just some of the examples of the swimming, the plant and algae sperm cells that swim, right? Very different from animal sperm, of course. And what's really cool is here's a short video. This is a dime. Do you guys know what a dime is? That's like an old man joke. No one uses cash, right? Don't use pennies for sure. Nobody does. So here's a dime. This is the gametophyte for a fern. This species of fern. So it gives you an idea how small these things are, right? And so here's a close-up of a gametophyte. Remember, these are not baby plants. They're just the different generation, right? They're haploid. They have rhizoids down there. And that's where the spore is coming from, right? There's the spore that's dropped and it's germinated from there. And then these are the gametophytes. They're putting water on it. And this is when that would simulate, say, a rain, right? And they're going to release their sperm. And as we'll see, a lot of these gametophytes in the ferns are homosporous. That means they have both male and female spores, gametes that come out of them. So there's their little sperm swimming. That's kind of cool. You never think of plant sperm, right? Especially on something on land. Right? Now remember the archegonia? Archegonia, antheridium, right? And so that's where those gametes originate from. So here's another. And they're corkscrew with more than one flagella. And they're all trying, remember the archegonia releases a chemical that will then attract the sperm. So, remember, this is a land plant too. So they've made it to land, but they still rely on water for reproduction, and that's going to limit to where they can live, obviously, right? Cool. I just think that's cool to watch. Plant cells swimming around, right? Land plants. A little pop culture here. If you're a rugby fan, New Zealand is very wet, right? Are you familiar with New Zealand? You've never heard of New Zealand? Do you know where New Zealand is? New Zealand is an island nation. It's a Polynesian country. But unlike most of the other Polynesian countries, they're not in the tropics. They're in well, Lord of the Rings. Come on, help me out, nerds. You guys don't watch it? Are we just gonna have to watch Lord of the Rings one of these days? Anyway, that's where it was filmed. It was filmed in New Zealand. So it's kind of this otherworldly place anyway. The native peoples there are the Maori, and they're Polynesians, right? Like Hawaiians, Tongans, right? Are you familiar with all that? Anyway, this is too much talk for Plant. I thought you would know what all this is. That's okay. I like it when you don't know stuff. Right? The main thing being here is their mascot is a fern. Yay! So they call themselves the Ferns. So here's this big, intimidating, big rugby, which are very physical, and a fern, right? Which is neat, because how many sports teams take on plants as, can you think of any sports teams with plants as the mascot? It's kind of neat. Oakland kind of has that oak tree. I love it when they put the oak tree on there. The Warriors, but they're not in Oakland anymore.
The Oakland Roots, their soccer team.
Who?
The Oakland Roots.
Oakland Roots, you're right. Actually, yeah, their soccer team has roots. It's upside down, oak tree kind of. Cool. Ireland, the shamrock, right? Scotland, the thistle. Oh, what else? Think of any other plants that are national symbols?
Mexico has the cactus.
No, that's Mexico though gets points for having ecology on their flag, because they have a whole ecological thing going on. Predation, photosynthesis, right? Reproduction with the flowers. It's a pretty cool flag for ecology. Anyway, so I'm just going to show you one more thing, because I know you guys like distractions. So what the more is, here you can see they're in New Zealand. This is their rugby team. And they have this ritual that they've revived because they were a tribal warrior class type of society. And there were a lot of fighting amongst different groups. And they've transferred that to rugby. And this is what they do, a war dance before their games. It's kind of cool.
Now a moment for the Maori All Blacks to prepare for the haka, the team that introduced the haka to New Zealand rugby.
It's called the haka. See the ferns? Ferns! All right, let's go collect ferns. You pumped up now? Anyway. And the women's team does it too. All right. Calm down. Okay. So where we are phylogenetically, our common green algae ancestor, right, chlorophytes, embryo protection, right? As we look at all these live things, remember that after the zygote is fertilized, it's encased around tissues, right? Whereas these guys, it's just sperm and egg unite outside of anything, and then the zygote has to grow on its own. Here's our friends, the liverworts, right? Apical growth then includes everything up here, mosses and hornworms. Here we are now, vascular tissues. So we're gonna look at what are called the club mosses. So they have a vascular tissue, but what separates them is they have what are called microphyls. Their leaves are not like, have lots of veins and tissue around it. They're just kind of like spikes coming out of it. We'll look at that in more detail. And then megaphils just means regular old leaves that you're familiar with, right? And that's the ferns. Ferns have everything but seeds, pretty much. They have vascular, they have leaves, but no seeds, right? Then we'll finish with these two groups, of course, right? So hopefully you got in your head the progression of what's going on here, kind of in plant evolution. So with the vascular plants, right, the xylem and the phloem are a major factor. We talked about this a lot, this kind of little review as well too, right? Lignin, that's what supports those, to transport liquids around, you have to have a very rigid structure. And also too, a big thing too is being on land, being straight up, right? And once they have these xylem and phloem as well too, it keeps them rigid, and there's a big competition for what? For sunlight. Everyone's getting bigger. They're getting closer to the sun. You don't want to be shaded out, right? And so that's another big movement as well. Then branching out, right? Branching growth, apical meristem. And here now, the sporophylls are branched. Instead of just that one thing you had coming out of the mosses. And also multiple, not just one anymore. Remember, you just had the cap on the moss. These now branch out and have multiple sporangia. Roots now, true roots as well too. Before we had things that just anchored, but they didn't really need them to absorb water because they were only a few cells thick all throughout their body. Here though now, true roots, because what true roots do is they not only anchor, but they also absorb water and minerals. Right? And the gametophyte, as you saw, is reduced, getting smaller and smaller. We also, on a side note, you'll notice in this lecture, we have a lot more fossils represented. And the main reason is lignin will fossilize a lot easier than, remember the soft tissues of the mosses and all those other herbaceous. The lignin, so we have a really good fossil record of these. And we won't do this yet, but then finally, of course, seeds, right, which are the last thing. So we're doing all this except for the seeds. So like I said, good vascular, or a good, this has it all. The oldest known vascular plant has everything. It has branching, multiple sporangia up top, and lignified, Cooksonia. And this goes, back to the Devonian. This is an artist's conception of perhaps what these early land plants might have looked like. Right? So we noticed before too that the shift to land was a major event, and all of these things that plants had to overcome, drying out. Remember, gravity is pulling on them. They're not as buoyant as they are in water. And then also, of course, reproduction, right? Swimming gametes, that limits what you can and can't do. But of course, coming onto land, I think we mentioned this earlier, right? All these features before, have we mentioned these? I think we have, anyway. What are the benefits of them? Of course, water reduces the sun's energy, so just get rid of water, come on the land, right? Get more energy. Also the soils, the nutrients you need. In water, they're very, very dilute. If they're saturated in water, then they're going to be very, very dilute. Here, they're concentrated. And then a major thing, of course, nothing's going to eat you on land. Nothing's really evolved to eat you, no heterotrophs. Right? So it must have been really nice in the beginning. Right? But you never think of vegetarians as awful, right? Hopefully now you've changed your mind. Eating plants. Just to eat other vegetarians. All right. This is kind of review as well too, because we already did this early anatomy, right? Because we used, remember at the beginning of the course, we used vascular plants as our model, as general. So we're kind of getting there now. The root, right? Anchors the plant, absorbs water. We saw the shoot system, which are the stems and leaves. And then of course we have our different tissue systems. Dermal, what's the other one? Oh, you have this home. I'm going to review with you guys, because we already did this, right? The dermal, the vascular, which are the conductive tissues, and the ground tissue, right? Which is everything in between those two. Also, primary growth. This is pretty much a review of that first stuff we had, just so we get us into place. Primary growth, right? You know that at the tips. The earliest plants are pretty much all primary growth, and then of course secondary growth, which increases thickness. So here's an example of a very basic stripped down vascular plant that still exists today. In fact, we're going to look at some of it. This is a club moss sporophyte, right? Because here's the old gametophyte that it's coming out of. Right? This is haploid, diploid. So if we look at our three types of cross sections, that's a cross section of a leaf. Notice we talked about microphyls. A microphyll is just pretty much just these extensions out there. It does have a vein because it's vascular. Stoma, right? Epidermis and mesophyll. Pretty basic. The stem, your zome and your phloem with your vascular bundle in the middle, right? And your epidermis and your cortex. Very, very basic. A root cross section, pretty much the same thing, right? Epidermis, root hairs, which increase surface area to absorb more water. Now, when we're looking at the xylem, these red represent the lignified walls, right? They're called the tracheary elements, which you probably recognize, right? Your trachea. Your trachea cannot collapse, right? Unlike your esophagus collapses all the time, your trachea has to stay open. So you kind of see trachea, it keeps it open. You can't have these things that will collapse. So we'll look at this. I don't think it's today, but we'll look at tracheary elements. Actually, we already have, haven't we? Kind of, when we're looking at tissues. Yeah. So these are just different patterns of them. Like I said, these are well preserved. Usually the cross section of the tissues you're looking at, that's what you're looking at, right? It's cropping off the top, and that's what you're looking at under the microscope. And that's for the xylem. What goes in the xylem? Water and trace minerals, right? So this is what keeps them up. Now, these are called stellas, and what these are the red, once again, are the tracheary elements, that it stays stiff and conduct the water through it. So these are just kind of some basic, you have your early ones, and then it gets progressively, these are what we have in the major vascular plants. So this is a protostela, simplest, most ancient. It's just a solid cylinder of vascular tissue. That's not, so all of that is where the water comes out through, right? And then the phloem either surrounds it or it's interspersed. These are the lycophytes, which we'll look out over there, right? And then this then has a pith. So all of your conducting tissues are the red on the outside, but it's hollow, right, with a big pith in the middle. So everything's going out along the round. And then with your leaves, though, it's in the middle, and there's just tissue surrounding it. These are pretty much most of the seedless vascular plants that aren't ferns, right? And so ferns, what they have here are leaf gaps. That's just where this continuous stela breaks off from the main one, and you just have a gap right there in the conduction. It's called a leaf gap. And then finally, the seed plants just have these tubes, pretty much, right? And we know, we've seen those tubes. They're in a round, you know, the dispersal of them depends on whether it's a monocot or a dicot. So obviously roots and leaves with a vascular plant evolved in different ways. Because roots are very, very simple. They do the same thing, right? They're in the ground getting water. And pretty much they look like the really basic vascular system of primitive plants, the whole thing. So roots pretty much are your trace of what you saw from earlier evolution. The leaves, though, and the lateral appendages, these are a little bit different. You see a lot more variation in how, because you have different types of leaves and all kinds of different ways of getting light under different conditions. So like I mentioned already, we have microphyls, 2 different types of leaves. Small leaves then contain only a single strand of vascular tissue right down the middle. And the megaphylls, right? And lots of branching veins. Remember pinnate, palmate, all that stuff. So hypothetically, you know, what's going on? Microphylls evolved at outgrowths of the main axis, right? So when you look at these microphylls over there, it's pretty much, you know, just branching of the main axis. And some megaphylls too, this branching, where then you get fill in the tissue in the middle for collecting sunlight. Now, one thing that's kind of cool is that there is a lot of, what we have today, a lot of the lycophytes are just small little things. And they've been outcompeted by the gymnosperms and angiosperms. But when there are no gymnosperms and angiosperms, these things, they evolved wood as well. So wood's been evolved several times, right? Remember the Carboniferous period? Have we talked about the Carboniferous period? Yeah, that's where we're getting all our coal and our petroleum from this time. Now, remember we talked about the spores? First of all, what's a spore? It's a meiosis, right? The result of meiosis from a sporophyte. And instead of merging with another cell, they germinate, right? So they're haploids that are germinating. And so there's 2 types. You have a plant that's homosporous. Homo means same. So the spores are undifferentiated. So you undergo meiosis and there's only one kind of spore. Then there are species that are heterosporous, where you can distinctively see the difference between the 2 spores. They have 2 different spores. One that comes in the antheridium and one comes out of the archegonium. And then also as well, the gametophyte is getting smaller, right, and less. So all the phyla of the seedless vascular plants dominating during the Devonian. Now there's a whole group. What we see today, right? These red ones are extinct. They only exist in the fossil record. But remember, a lot more ecological niches to fill when they're the only ones. And then the living representatives today are the Lyca, Podophydia, and then Pteridophyta. Don't worry, you don't need to know these, but these are artists' replications of some of those extinct early groups. And of course, right, carboniferous swamps are loaded with this stuff. This is where we get our coal. Already told you that, right? Okay. It's always fun to go on the internet and look at all the different artists' interpretation of the carboniferous, because it's kind of cool, kind of neat, dreamy area. Here, I don't think I showed you a picture of this before, right? But this is an open pit coal mine. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. You have two different types of coal mines. One where you have to go down deep and you get a vein and just keep, that's where you just keep digging and digging, digging, go deeper, 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 right? That's where you'd have the cave-ins. These are close enough to the surface where they just strip everything off top and just dig right out of it. Obviously, these are more of an environmental issue as well. Not only for digging up coal and burning it, but also just anything that was alive on top of there is gone, right? So it's called a strip mine. But this gives you a sense of scale. This is an ancient forest, right? That's where they're getting all that coal from. Photosynthesis from 300 million years ago. So like I said, here's that plant again. This is what it looks like, right, in the fossil. Pretty cool. These are, right, rhizomes that are growing underground and sprouting up. All right, so let's look at some of these things. So the Lycopodiophyta go back about 400 million years. Today there's about 10 to 15 living genera and about 1,200 living species. All lycophytes have microphytes. And tree lycophytes are gone. All of them we have today are herbaceous, which means no woody tissue. So the club mosses, all but two are belong to this family, so major. These are also mostly tropical. All but two are here in North America. They are homosporous, which means they just have one spore, right? One type of spore. They have what are called sporophylls. These are modified leaves, so they're leaves. So now here you have a modification of what used to be something for photosynthesis has been modified for just producing spores. Right? Remember the sporophylls before on our mosses didn't really photosynthesize, they just made spores. These then are modified leaves that then have the sporangia. Then there's also what are called strobili. Right? So get strobili. These are sporophylls that don't photosynthesize at all. Have you heard of cones? Pine cones? Think of a pine cone, right? They don't photosynthesize, but they are modified leaves as well too. So you have both sporophylls and strobili, right? Should be able to look at those. We'll have examples of that. when we say homosporous, so essentially you have one spore, one type of spore. It germinates into one gametophyte that is bisexual. It has both archegonia and antheridion, so it produces both sperm and agon. So the sperm have to migrate and get to the archegonia. There you have your egg, right? And when it gets fertilized, then it's once again the embryo is surrounded by that tissue. So these are strobili. Very, very basic. Here's your gametophyte, right? The sporophyte. So these are free living. Your gametophyte's no longer free living. You have fertilization take place here in the archegonia, and then your sporophyte comes out. These then produce the spores, right? Meiosis occurs there in the sporangium. These are the sporophyll, right? Which are the modified leaves, and then containing all those are the strobili. Sorry, are you with me on that? So the sporophyll, think of the sporophyll as like the scales on a cone, right? And then the whole structure is called a strobili. So if you want to sound really, really obnoxiously smart, right, you can correct people. Say it's not a cone, it's a strobili. Right? Just trying to help you increase your social life and standing. One goal. So, right, here's examples. These are obviously sporophylls, so you can actually see the leaves, right? And then the strobili have the sporophylls, but they're not photosynthetic. They're actually kind of yellow if you look at them in a living plant. We don't have any living lycopodium, which is a bummer, because we used to get it all the time, but our suppliers don't give it to us anymore. But there are, when you do lab today, I have preserved samples of them. This one kind of is fresh, so you can see the green, right, microphylls, and then the light colored strobili on top. See that? Okay. So make sure you look at that. Also a really good example of it as well right here. Right, they're lycopodium. So are you with me, kind of, right? You can see how this essentially is, it's not a seed plant yet, as we'll see how seeds come. But you can see essentially right where the sporangium are. They're in a located place now that has nothing to do with photosynthesis. So we're really ratcheting up reproduction here. This is the whole sequence, of course. Here's your homospore, right? Germinates, bisexual. In the antheridia, produces the sperm. These sperm need to swim to the egg in the archegonia. You get fertilization. The embryo is surrounded in this tissue, and look, here's the embryo. It's starting to grow, right? Here's the gametophyte. This is the sporophyte, and it grows out. Here's your gametophyte, and then it then makes spores again. You can kind of see, right? You have this in a seed, except the seed is what? It's got a covering, right? And you can see how a major advantage that is, right, for the seed. Because this thing, once it goes, it can't go dormant. It has to grow. So if conditions are right, dead, right? So you can see how a seed is a lot more advantageous. Somewhere along the evolution, this thing got a life capsule, right? some more Salaginella. We have a sample of this. It dries up really well. It looks like that when it's a lot of times this is called resurrection moss. Sometimes too, not the same as what I'm going to show you in our field trip. But this is not a moss, right? No, they're called spiked mosses, but it looks mossy, but it's not a moss. Mostly tropical. This is heterosporous, two different types of spores, megasporophylls and microsporophylls. So here you can see the different types of spores, right? So here's the microspore, very small, and the megaspore, larger, right? Heterosporous, two kinds of sporangia. And you can kind of see what direction this is going in. Can you? Can anyone see fast forward? Maybe ovum and pollen, right? Maybe, I don't know. So Salaginella you can find. This is cool. I came across this on the trail once. I was super happy. Right? Took a picture of it. I was like, what is that? Salaginella? Oh my gosh. Right? So this is heterosporous. You have your microspore, your megaspore. Check it out, right? This thing, the Archegonia, egg stays home, right? Female. Here, the micro gametophyte just bursts out with all the sperm, right? Still multicellular though. Both these are multicellular, but they're getting smaller and smaller. Still needs water too. So major, right? We think of the egg, or I mean, we think of the seed, but also the pollen is a major step because this also has no means of surviving once it germinates. Yeah.
You say it's like towards the direction of like the flowers with the pollination, but
Not necessarily flowers, because as we'll see, gymnosperms also have pollen.
well, but the only thing I'm a little confused by is I thought the whole thing with the megaspore is meant to be the egg, right? But it pops out. So like I thought the whole thing is they don't leave.
What do you mean pops out?
Like it doesn't the megaspore leave like the microspore, but I thought the whole thing with what was considered
Yeah, but look at the egg, it stays home. That's what we're talking about.
I'm
The
sorry.
egg is not leaving. Remember, these are gonna germinate into gametophytes.
Oh, okay.
And the egg is inside, and so
Oh, so only the
you
micro-
get fertilization here, right?
So does only the microspore leave? The megaspore stays, or am I getting this wrong again?
No, the megaspore leaves too, but the gametes inside of it, that doesn't leave.
Oh,
See how this bursts and the gametes leave? Are you with me?
Kind of confused. I'm sorry.
I think the megaspore and the microspore aren't the gametes. They are
They're not the gametes.
organisms
Oh.
that release
You
gametes.
mean
These are not
They're
gametes,
just
right.
like a separate. Oh, this is
Yeah.
just. Oh, I'm sorry.
Remember spores?
Yeah, it's a separate life.
Spores will germinate, right? Instead of uniting, right?
They're
And then the gametes are also haploids that
and then the
then
spores. The
fuse.
spores aren't haploids, right? Or
Spores are haploids.
oh,
Right.
all right,
Spores are haploids that then develop
all right,
multicellularity.
all right.
Then they release gametes. So a big thing here, right, is remember there's no dormant period for this embryo. It has to grow immediately, right? So here's that sporophyte coming out that was growing inside, right, the megaspore. This you can see then, right, you can see the advantage of a seed. That's what a seed's essentially going to be. Okay, so that this has to germinate right away. So you have your young embryo inside of the archegonium, right? Here's the megagametophyte. There is your embryo, okay? It has to grow immediately. And this is nourished initially by the megagametophyte. What do we see this in here? Remember the how seeds have a nourishing part of them? That nourishing part is going to be the remains of the megaspore. Quillworts, you actually find these in the Sierra. A lot of these things you'll just pass by. You'd have to get down and really recognize them. Quillworts. Microphyll leaves, see the microphylls? Alright. Now the Pteridophyta, ferns and horsetails. So, you've heard of ferns? Right? Okay. Have you heard of horsetails?
Yeah.
How many here have heard of horsetails? Raise your hand. A couple of you.
Yeah, they're a pain.
Horsetails are super cool, though, right? We'll look at these on our field trip for sure. Does someone have horsetails as their species? You know what someone just told me that, or brought to my attention, is we don't have any pine people on our field trip. They all dropped. All our pines.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what? So anyway, I'll be your pine person.
Oh yeah, and you're supposed to like remember your thing or something.
You're supposed to be a ranger for 5 minutes.
Dang, I don't want to do that.
Remember ranger, which means it's going to be interesting and fun.
I thought I was gonna be like Chuck Norris and I was gonna have magical like powers or something.
Yeah, I thought you were going to be Chuck Norris too. All right, so 11,000 living species of ferns, most diverse group of plants other than angiosperms. So, right, basic doesn't necessarily mean not as successful. They're just still here, right? Most of them are tropical, and most are homosporous. And you even have some wood species, woody ferns. It's pretty cool. Don't worry about the groups that are in these two types of sporangia. So there's two types that pretty much divide these two fern groups out. I'll show you what these are. They're called the eusporangium and the leptosporangium. I'll show you that in more detail. But don't worry about this, it's just there. Just to, as a guide. I'm never gonna ask you stuff like this. Especially today, you can always look stuff up. You know, think of the old days, you had to know, right? So these are, geez, they should be yellow. You can barely read them. So homosporous, right? Heterosporous,
Order Mars.
heterosporous. For these
Order
different-
Salvinialis.
So of course you're familiar with sword ferns. We have them just growing here in the atrium, right? These are tree ferns. They can be woody, right? They're really cool. If you ever see a tree fern, you feel like you're, walking among dinosaurs. It's gonna be.
I think my neighbors have these.
Remember now, something so big has no fruit or seeds. Right? They still have. These are the sword ferns and the bracken ferns that are common around here in the Sierra and on the Coast Range. But not all ferns are ferny, right? Remember, they have megaphylls, right? So lots of different types of leaves. They can be epiphytic. Do you know what an epiphyte is? Epiphytes don't live in soil on the ground. As long as they don't need soil. They get a lot of their water and nutrients from the air. And so here's an example. Remember we talked about those moss mats? You can have a lot of, this is an epiphytic fern.
So it's like living on a tree, basically.
Yeah, epi means surface, above, right? We really need 2 field trips. Because a lot of this stuff is really cool on the coast. You find a lot of the redwoods. Why are you whistling?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm not annoyed by it, I'm just curious.
Sorry.
Why you would whistle?
You just whistle.
Oh, okay. Very good. Whistle on. show you some of the diversity. This is cool. I found this on a hike once. If you flip it over, you find these. Right? Those are called the sori. We'll look at this in more detail. These were, I forgot the word, but the prefix is crypto. A lot of times they call these crypto, but crypto means what? Mysterious, right, or unknown?
It means pretending to be someone else or secretly something else, basically.
You don't know what it is, essentially, right? And crypto breeders, essentially. I forgot what the word was. It isn't breeder. But forever, they're like, how do these, there's no seeds, there's no fruit, there's no flower. How do they reproduce? Forever, they were just kind of grouped into this one thing because they didn't know how they reproduced. Which is kind of neat. All right, so remember we talked about the sporangium. So going back here, these are the sporangium on here. They make the spores, all right? They're found on the other sides of leaves. When you're looking at a fern, a lot of times is to flip over the leaf and look for the sporangium. Not all the leaves have them though, all right? And they're very diagnostic to species. Now remember we talked about eusporangium and leptosporangium? You don't need to know which groups have them, but it's nice to know what it actually is. So what eusporangium does, it originates from a series of cells, right? So you have these kind of initials. This is the leaf, right? The underside of the leaf. And this is gonna turn into the sporangium. So it's several cells. Then it gets encased in here. And then the spores undergo meiosis inside there. So, right, when you think of gonads, perhaps, right? Produce sperm and egg. This is kind of like that. Except they come from stem cells, undifferentiated. Remember, excuse me. A's for everybody. Except for you, you didn't say it. I don't know, I just randomly. So, remember these are, this is 2N, right? But they don't, this is where the spores are born, right? Meiosis, that's what I wanted to say. Meiosis is happening here. So this is eusporangium. Then leptosporangium originates from one single cell. So the other one has several, so it has one cell, right? And then you get this kind of stalk that grows. Then that cell in there, this is going to be the origin of your meiosis, that one that undergoes meiosis. It's kind of neat because, you know, as you know, plants are very plastic in a lot of their forms, right? They have stem cells their whole lives. Right? So it's like, hey, I need some gametes, right?
Wish I could.
Wherever it is. So these are those orders I told you before. I'm not going to ask you, but I just feel responsible to show you what they are. So this is a eusporangia fern. They don't look very ferny. See that, right? Single leaf produced each year from the stem. That's it. And then each leaf has just a vegetative portion or a fertile segment. And the gametophytes are underground. Another eusporangium. These go back to Carboniferous period. Homosporous leptosporangian fern. That sounds cool, right? You could say that at a party.
Homosporous leptosporangium.
Homosporous leptosporangian fern.
People are going to care about more.
You know what that means then, right?
Heterosporous.
Homosporous.
That means one spore.
One type of spore. And what is leptosporangium?
I don't know what that means, Professor. Enlighten me.
Remember I just showed you.
I'm stupid.
It's how this sporangia develops. A single cell.
Oh, single.
Single cell then.
Sorry, I was kind of in space in my head.
So most of the ferns that you know of are from this.
Hey, wait a minute, Professor.
Yeah.
So when it says homosporous, that just means that, because, oh, now I get it. Because there's sometimes they have multiple ways of reproducing.
What's
Megaphil.
homosporous means one type of spore.
Because I forget there's different types of spores. Some of them are super.
There are heterospores too as
Yeah.
well. Megaphils, the young leaves come out as fiddleheads. Does anyone here know what a fiddlehead is? They can be, some of them are edible.
Some of them kill you.
And so essentially, I think I have a fiddlehead here. Let's see.
But can we eat the Professor?
So instead of the leaves being a bud and then growing out like you think of on an angiosperm, they come out and they uncoil. So this right here, right, there's one, a fiddlehead, and then it'll unfurl and then it'll bring its leaves out. So here I isolated this one. This is a fiddlehead. If you look at it closely, you'll see this is all tightly coiled, and it's eventually going to grow out and spread its leaves. This is a frond with sori on the bottom, which are the sporangia. It's all dried up. So the sori, right, are where the concentrated sporangia are, and are all kinds of different types of arrangements, and all right, you can identify different species on these. Is sori a name of some characters? Oh, sorry. Giant chain fern, you see these. In fact, I think that's the one that I got over there from the sori I have, the giant chain fern.
Wow.
So the sporangia, remember we talked about how they're developed, leptosporangia, eusporangia. They're all clustered in here. This is essentially what the sori is. And it's covered with this protective. When they dry out, then what happens is from the pressure of drying out, then they explode. You get your spores from them. So here's a fern life cycle. By now you're probably familiar with all this stuff, right? Here's your sporangium. The spores come out. Is this homosporangius or heterosporangius? Homo, right? One type. This then germinates. It has both a gametophyte that has both the antheridium and the archegonium on it. Then the antheridium produces the sperm. Here's your archegonium with the ovum in it. These then, fertilization, you have your protected embryo, right? Then it starts to grow. Here's what's remains of the gametophyte. It lives off the gametophyte for a while until it starts to put up leaves, right? Then it can make its own living, and the gametophyte is gone. Sporophyte, free living sporophyte. Look under the leaves, you'll have the sori, right, with the sporangium inside of them. These are kind of cool. These are Heterosporus, Leptosporangiae, Azolla. These are really small, they're about that big. In fact, I have some specimens up there that I collected. These are all over the delta. And these are major because also they have a symbiotic protist, algae with it, that fixes nitrogen. And these are found all over the world because you can imagine, right, they stick to waterfowl's legs, right? And they're pretty much everywhere. These are a major component of rice fields in Southeast Asia because they nitrogenate the pasture. for it. small and they float on the water. And cyanobacteria as well. Oh, I said all this. Nitrogen common rice paddy. And then equisitales, another teridophyte. What does equisitales sound like? Equi. You guys know your mammals? Do you know what an equine is?
It's a horse.
Right? Go back to the Devonian. They used to have trees 18 meters high, right? That were like horse tails, which would be super cool to see. Only one genus today with 15 species. Maybe the oldest surviving plant genus on Earth. So that what that means is if you go and look at the fossil record, you can find horsetails of the same genes, pretty much, by diagnostic. And most of the jointed stems with rough texture, rhizomes, homosporous. These are also sometimes called scouring rush, because people would use them to clean things, because there's super tons of silica. Herbivores hate silica. What is silica? It's glass, essentially, right? And so one of the reasons for their success is they're pretty much inedible for a lot of herbivores. We'll see these on our field trip. Does anyone have this? No?
I've seen them before. They're kind of a pain to get rid of.
Well, because they will reproduce by rhizomes. They just send out shoots and you get a whole big groups of them.
No wonder they never go away.
Are there any UOP students here? Do I have any UOP? No. Sometimes I do. There's a big patch of this by the river on UOP's property, which I usually go and get specimens from. Those are some of them that I got from over there. So they have two types of shoots. So here's your rhizome, right? We know what rhizomes are, stems that grow underground, right? So they have what are called the vegetative shoot. And so these are just branches that come out to increase surface area for getting photosynthesis. And then they have the fertile shoot, which puts out the strobilus. Remember the strobilus, right? These are modified leaves with your sporangium inside of them that no longer photosynthesize. So here in vegetative shoots, mostly are green. The fertile shoots sometimes don't even have green on them because they're just interested in reproducing. Cross section, right? Once again. What else? Here's a gametophyte. Here's some we found on the Colby River. And then of course you have your life cycle again. Pretty much the same as a fern, right? Because they are, pretty much. Same thing, you should be able to recognize all that. Right? Same story over and over again.
It's a never-ending story.
All right, let's take 10 minutes and then we'll start lab. So